What if you could build a business that gives you the life of freedom you deserve? What if you could find the secrets to marketing, leadership, customer service, and other aspects of business that help you exceed your goals? What if you could walk away from your business for 30 days and it never misses a beat? That's what this podcast is for, to help business leaders like you find freedom from the day-to-day grind and start spending your time doing the things you love. I'm Levi McClendon, and my co-host is Josh Taylor, and this is the Cheers to Freedom podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Cheers to Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Josh Taylor. I'm with my co-host, Levi McClendon. And Levi, I look like I'm really sick. So don't adjust your screens or think something's wrong. I had some sort of a allergic reaction when I was cutting the grass last night and had no option but to get up this morning and record the podcast. I've been trying every remedy that I can. But Levi, welcome. And Dr. Bart, welcome. I'm going to ask Levi to introduce you to us because you guys are connected and friends, and we're excited to have both of you here.
Yeah. Well, Josh, sorry about the way that you look. I can't do anything about that.
Hey, that's the same line my brother's given me my entire life.
Yeah. Can't do anything about that. But yeah, I am sorry about that. When I popped on the podcast here, I was a little bit like, okay, is Josh feeling okay today? And
I feel great. I just don't look great.
Just don't look great. That's right. Stop cutting the grass, dude. Who, not how. Let's go.
Dude, I cut the grass 3 times a week.
I know.
I'm obsessed about
you
my
enjoy
yard.
that. You enjoy that. Well, it is good to be on here, and I'm excited to have Dr. Bart. You know, Josh, we've talked about bringing more to our podcast than just, of course, marketing, and that's really what we're trying to do here is bring other people, vendors, remedies, things that can help people in their life. I love helping people. We love helping people no matter what that looks like. So I'm excited, Dr. Bart. Thanks for being here. I'll tell a quick story. Dr. Bart is a chiropractor, but I also, to me, that's kind of secondary. He's a holistic, functional doctor that honestly has really impacted my life, my wife's life, and our entire family, to be honest. And I'll tell you a quick story. I'm not a huge fan of chiropractors. I'll just tell you that right now. And that's just, being straight up. I've gone to them before, but sometimes I feel like I'm worse off after, visiting them. But I do believe in self-care, right? I get massages, once a month. I try to just take care of my body. I work out. I try to eat right. And my wife had went and seen Dr. Bart. And she came back, and you would think that she met Jesus. She was like, oh my gosh, you've got to meet this guy. He was amazing. He's not just this, he's this. And my wife, you guys, for those who don't know, she's a medicine. She's a PA. She has been for 20 years. And she's very holistic. She's the one that when people call in for scripts and stuff, she's like, okay, how long have you had that symptom? And they're like, well, a day. And she's like, okay, hold on. You're not getting any antibiotics. You're not going, you need to have these, blah, blah, blah. So she's always about, kind of the organic, what are you doing to, what has God given us really that can heal you, right? Use that. And so when she came back and she's like, okay, you got to meet this guy. You've got to come. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll go because my wife tells me to. Long story short, man, we've been going to Dr. Bart now for a couple of years, and it really is game changing. He is so in tune with our bodies, with, what is good for us, not just the physical making us feel better, but also what are we putting into our bodies to make us feel better? And it has really been a journey just in the last couple of years. And as we get older, right, we start taking this stuff a little more seriously. I think I was 40, maybe 9 when I started seeing him. I'm now 51. I feel better today than I ever have. And it's a combination. It's just not from going to Dr. Bart, but it's a combination of, what are we doing for exercise? What are we doing to, what are we putting into our bodies? And how are we just ultimately taking care of ourselves? And I'll be, a quick story here. When I pulled my pec muscle, I know he's not a muscle doctor. He's not the doctor that's going to go heal me. But honestly, he was the first one that I talked to say, hey, do you think I should have surgery? What does this look like? And so he's that type of doctor that is so in tune with our bodies. And so Dr. Bart, we've talked about you being on this podcast for a while now. He has his own podcast. He'll get into that, here in a minute. I don't even know his full story. So I'm very excited to have Dr. Bart on this podcast. So welcome.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me. I love hearing how people get to me and originally and their thought process getting in there. It's always fun and funny at the same time. So kudos to you and your wife. It's I love working with you guys, mostly because your minds are wide open. That's the fun part. That's what keeps on my end of things of being a practitioner exciting. That's why I love working with entrepreneurs. And Josh, same thing. We just had a minute just to catch up there. Just the mindset of an entrepreneur, when applied to health, just really opens up the door to potentially move in the direction of really the best version of ourselves, which I don't think most people have ever experienced, which is the best version of themselves. So I don't know if you're wondering like my story, the background, I can go into that a little bit, if you want to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's important because when you and I were talking earlier before we started recording, you were telling a little bit about your backstory, and there was a point in your 40s where you realized that your health played a big part in what you were accomplishing in your personal life and professionally, because you were just up until that point you did chiropractic work, but then you had a moment of realization. So I'd love for you to get into that, because I think a lot of listeners that are listening to this, they're probably in that age range, that 40s. They're feeling the slowdown. They're feeling, kind of at the end of their rope every single day. And sometimes they're wondering, I haven't even done that much today and I'm tired and I'm worn out. And you had kind of that moment as well. So I'd love for you to kind of talk about, how did you get into the holistic functional type of medicine that you do, and how has it changed your life as an entrepreneur? Because you really, you've got so many businesses, you really are an entrepreneur, and love to hear about that.
You're absolutely right. So this is a journey, and back in about my 40s, I was 41, 42 years old. And I'll say this to start with, that most men in general, you're going to hit probably the low part of their health somewhere between 38 and 45 years old, almost statistically across the board. There's a couple of reasons for that. Fundamentally is that you're working for probably almost 2 decades at that point, really hard in your careers, bouncing around, some things working, not working. And as a result of that, typically a lot of the good health habits are slipping, and we're picking up a couple bad habits, staying up later, compromising our food, all of those different things. And all of health is a compounding interest. So there I was, 41 years old, had a chiropractic practice, had some passions in my life. But at that time, things like mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu and those things were really, big part of my fun parts of my life and everything. And yet what I found is that the more I did them, the more I was getting hurt. In fact, Josh, I got to a spot where all I could really do was what I had to do to survive, was go to clinic, see my patients, come home and crash. I'm not talking about just being tired. I was going home and just lying on my couch waiting for the next day. And there was something wrong with me, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And here I am, a chiropractor. I wouldn't even say at that point I was like a full-blown holistic doctor, but I was searching and nobody had the answer. So this is, 10, 15, I'm 55 now, so it's good 13 plus years ago. Eventually, I did what most people do. I went to a traditional doctor and they said, yeah, here's your problem. Your testosterone is that of like a 56-year-old guy. Take this and see you later, whatever. Short part of it was like, wow, I just got permission to go on testosterone. I was like, oh, this is going to be cool, right? So this is going to be the answer of it all. So I get the testosterone and I go on it. And in a real short period of time, my mind just goes, Bart, what are you doing? This isn't the answer. You weren't lacking what's going on? Why is my testosterone low at 40 years old? I've been athletic and all this stuff my entire life. So after about 60 days, even though it seemed like the best thing ever to just go on testosterone, because truthfully, I went on it and now I was jacked up and double exhausted. It's a bad roller coaster. We can talk about hormones later if you want. But anyway, so in this moment, Josh, I realized I'm on an island by myself. No one has any idea what's going on with me. And so I had to do a deep dive. And this is not a fun deep dive. And people say, what made you decide? I had no choice. It was literally I don't know, I'm not going to say die, but it was crumble or figure this thing out. So I figured there was 2 big things going on in my life right now. In that moment, I had long-standing gut issues, the gut issues.
And what do you mean? Because I hear gut issues a lot, and you got to take care of your gut. What were those gut issues or the symptoms?
So for simple sake, I would get bloated every time I ate, and my stomach would just be uncomfortable. And what was odd is the only way to make it feel good was to snack. And I was doing this my whole life. My stools would be sometimes constipated, sometimes loose. I was doing this, and that was most of my life, and I thought that was normal. But that's what everyone went through, because that's what I did. So I had that, and then I had this deep, deep level of exhaustion. I could not understand, no matter how motivated. And I read every book out there. I've been an avid reader all my whole life, personal development stuff, you name it. No matter what, I couldn't change the state of my energy. That was the first time I ever got exposed to something called adrenal fatigue or adrenal dysfunction. We have these little glands and sit on top of our kidneys that they help us adapt to stress. And if our ability to adapt to stress goes down, your body in a protective mode will essentially decrease your capacity to handle life. Because if you can't handle stress, you can't handle anything. Flip that over for the entrepreneur, then basically the more you can modulate, the more you can handle stress, the more you can do. That's it.
Yeah. Because that's the life of an entrepreneur, is just constant stress. Once something is solved, another problem reveals itself.
Yeah, which by itself, I think that's like the beauty of being an entrepreneur. Like we continue to beg for more stress. We really do. You have one good business, you're like, man, why don't I have two of these?
It's like we're addicted to it.
Yeah. And really, the extent to which we can push that will always boil back down to how much energy do you have? That's it.
Mm.
And so I had no energy at 40, 41. And this is also the same time I just started in my late 30s. I started going out and speaking and teaching to docs and doing a little personal development stuff. Loved every minute. I had to give it all up. It literally didn't every time I traveled, I got sick. So these patterns started coming, and I started to come up with more and more excuses. Oh, there was a sick kid on the plane, and that's why I got sick, or just the stuff to hear every day. And
you cut the grass and you got allergies.
Cut the grass, yeah. So you whispered something. I don't know if it's just me getting older, and I'll say, yeah, we have to go from the inside out. If the outside in is always the problem, we become very small. We don't have a lot of control over our lives if it's always the outside in winning, meaning that if it's the people around us that make us sick, then you can't go anywhere. Don't get on a plane. Don't go to an auditorium. Don't go to a concert. You can't do it because you're always going to get sick. The truth is that it is more the environment. It's the house that we live in. And it is our bodies that determine these things. So these were some hard realizations. I scrambled. Remember, this was way before even Google was really cool and we didn't have our iPhones and stuff like that. So I had to scramble. And I had to figure out little bit by little bit. One of the hardest things I had to do was change my diet. My wife used to always say, you don't eat a lot because you're always eating. And she was right. I was always a snacker. And I found out that that was very detrimental to my blood sugar levels, to my gut health, all the above. So as a result of figuring out that I had a massive gut issue and I had a massive adrenal dysfunction issue, I started to go to work. And at the time, nobody had an answer how to heal leaky gut. No one was even talking about leaky gut. So this was my journey. Now this has become kind of my, if I call it my life's work, but the certain part of what I share back into the world is how to heal up leaky gut, how to get your energy back. So if I go fast forward to this, Josh.
Well, before you do that, you talked about the low energy, the gut issues, and I think the low energy is probably something that a lot of us feel and resonate with for sure. How is that affecting your personal life, your relationship with your wife, or even your friends and the people around you?
Great question, because it became a massive teaching point today, and hopefully we'll dive into it, or even right now. It's significantly affected. I never thought up until that point that my health, my lack of it, or my abundance of it would have a direct correlation on my relationship. This is a tough message sometimes to hear, but I learned firsthand that my ability to be an awesome husband when I was sick and exhausted wasn't there. I'm not an awesome husband. It may be hard to kind of receive this, but if you have ill health, you are affecting all your relationships in your life in an ill way. As a man, if I could summarize basically our purpose on this earth in two ways, and it could be a little more than this, but basically, we are providers and we are protectors. That is what we do. And if we can do those things for the people, our family, our spouses, the people that we love in our lives, if we can provide and protect for them, we feel fulfilled. Nothing makes us feel better than the fact that we know we are providing and protecting. And listen, guys, when we're not well, we can't do either. And I realized that my wife, and she's an amazing, incredible woman, this is not what she signed up for. She didn't sign up for an exhausted dude lying on a couch. That didn't have the capacity to go for a walk, for the run, for let's go to the concert, to go traveling. I didn't have the capacity to do these things. So it started to wedge. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And looking back on it, I don't blame her. That's not what she signed up for. She, signed up for this guy that was super healthy, super mindful, and I'd lost my ways. I started to push the envelope to a point where I wasn't recovering properly. I was not necessarily having the energy and the enthusiasm for life that I once did. The impact was huge. And if I go a step farther and say that my relationship with my wife was being affected, so was my relationship with my bank account. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My ability to go for more was being limited. So I was doing the bare minimum to survive. And unfortunately, I see so much of that in the entrepreneurial world that a lot of people are hanging on. They're trying to make it by.
Yeah. Well, I think when we feel that way, even for me, I, in the last, 18 months or something like that, I've lost 50 pounds, and I didn't realize how much, being at, like, it was the one thing that I was self-conscious about, the way that I looked, the way that I felt. I would go hang out with a lot of our guys. I would go to the shows, the car wash shows and all of those things. And all these guys are fit and skinny and, they look good in all the OpSot swag. And I'm like sitting here, like trying to put Spanx on to hide everything. And it affected my confidence. It affected, just my ability to go and talk to people, or to, do even a big part of my job, which is getting in front of people, in front of the camera, and doing those things, because I was always self-conscious about the way that I looked and felt and came across. And so just, in the last 18 months of taking my health really seriously and getting healthy, the confidence level has risen so much, and it has allowed me to put myself out there more because of that, I think.
Yeah, I think anything that we do, we take an action, we get a positive outcome or an outcome that we can learn by, and then we just dive into it, lean into it. That's where the confidence comes from, that experience. Josh, at 50 pounds, hats off to you, brother. You've literally changed the direction of your life. So,
and I feel it. It's changed my life. And, it was a combination of things. It was being mindful of what I was eating. It was eating intentionally and eating certain things intentionally, which, in my case, it was a lot of protein, but it was also putting the right people around me. And Levi was one of those people, because he's such a motivator, and he believes that in the best in people. I've tried it, I had a fast metabolism. They called me Skeletor in high school. I couldn't gain weight if I tried. And then it was like 20 years old hit, and I was in college, and it was all downhill from there. And so for the last 10 years or so, I've tried to do this, but I never had the people around me that would motivate me, that would believe that I could do it. And then taking a friend of mine, on the journey with me, who had about the same amount to lose, and doing that with me also helped. So it was having somebody on the journey doing it with you, and having somebody on there who's constantly pushing you and motivating you and believing that you can do it, were the big things for me. But it wasn't easy, and it was 10 years in the making, but it has absolutely changed my life in so many ways.
Yeah, change your life and everyone around you's life.
Changed my bank account too, because I had to buy a bunch of new clothes.
Yeah, it's nice. Good problem to have. But literally, by doing that, you've changed everyone that you come into contact. You changed their lives as well, and I think we forget that sometimes. So every day, every moment of our lives, we're walking around as a billboard, and we're telling people a story about who we are, what we believe in, our values, our decisions to make actions. You said something there, Josh, that I think is really important, especially in the entrepreneurial world. You talked about the people around you. I call it accountability. As alpha dogs, as entrepreneurs, very few of us have anyone to be accountable for. That's reality. As adults, when it comes to our health, this is for men and women. Very rarely do we have anyone holding us accountable for our health. We have people that care about our health, but accountability, whole different level. And I find that's probably a big shortcoming in the entrepreneurial world. And that is why people get off track and end down a path that they don't want to be on. Once we make accountability or have accountability, and that can come in a lot of different ways. Once we have that, that's where it changes, because naturally, I think as entrepreneurs, we're a bit competitive in a good fashion. So if we have someone that we're reporting to, then there's this, well, I'm going to report here. I don't want a bad grade. I want a good score. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up in Levi. He knows when he comes into me, he knows I'm going to ask him about his diet. He knows I'm going to ask him about his exercise. He knows I'm going to ask about, just how well he's doing. And his body won't lie. So having data on one level, having accountability, the gap in between their strategy. So as entrepreneurs, and it's probably very similar to your business, quite frankly, if you can collect the data, right? And then there's some accountability, a coaching, a mentorship, a check-in point. If you have the data and you have some level of accountability, and then you develop strategy, you've developed a formula to win. And I think we get that in the business world. And we recognize that, sometimes we may have to invest a little time, a little bit of money, a little resources to do those things. And those who do it go, that was worth it. That made sense.
Yeah.
So what did you, if we can, I don't want to get too far off track, because I still want to know, Bart, what did you do? Marriage, you're exhausted, can't get off the couch. So what did you do to get to where you're at today? Yeah.
So first thing I started to do is I started educating myself on a level that I didn't do before. And it was a deep dive into nutrition, the spaces of energy, you name it. I went back to being a student. There was something I didn't understand, but I also believe, and I've always had a strong faith in the power that made the body heals the body, and that it really doesn't happen any other way. When the first day you go to chiropractic school, you learn this real fascinating, they introduce you to the philosophy of chiropractic. And this is kind of interesting. This is when I knew I was in the right place. Very first day, you're in an auditorium, you have no idea what's going on, you don't really know what you're getting into, and they tell you that there's a simple philosophy in chiropractic. And this is what makes our profession different than all the other professions out there, that we believe that the power that made the body heals the body. That specifically, that health comes from above down, and from the inside out. That philosophy right there is what is every day I see a human being that lies on my table, comes in my office, or I'm on a Zoom with. I remember that philosophy saying the above, down, inside out, the power that made the body heals the body. And it doesn't happen any other way. Traditionally, our healthcare system works in the exact opposite, that it comes from the outside to the in and to interfere with below and above. So we're trying to shut off what the brain's listening. So if you have a pain in your big toe, you're taking a drug from the outside, bringing it into the body and telling your brain to shut up. So it's an exact polar opposite of everything we've learned about healthcare. So I went back to my philosophy and said, all right, I truly embrace this idea that the power that made the body heals the body, and that the way that it works from above down, from the inside out. So with that being said, I need to learn a little bit more about my body. I had to stop interfering. My first big change was, and this seems so simple and so silly, but as an entrepreneur, everyone's going to get this. I had to sleep again.
Mm-hmm.
I was a chest pounder. I sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, and I'm okay. That's what the story I told it to everyone as if it was a badge of honor. It was utter bullshit. It literally was crap because it was breaking me, and I used it as a badge of honor. And I think many of us have as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I learned that lesson. I learned what happened when I started to get 7 hours of sleep at night. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute here. This is what people feel like when they have 7 hours every night, maybe 8 hours on occasion. I was like, well, this is like a fountain of youth. And then I just started adding on to that. The diet was the hardest thing because I've always walked around relatively lean because I've always exercised. So at the time, for 2 decades of my life, I walked around at 14% body fat, which is, for the most part, people think is good, right? And then I cleaned up my diet and I got rid of the carbs, the crap, the pizza and the beer and the alcohol. I don't drink anymore. And it's not because I had a drinking problem, but drinking was interfering with me being the best version of myself. It was interfering with me being a great husband. It was real simple. I drank on Friday, I had less energy on Saturday. It's that simple. It was just math. It was data. That's all it was. And I started to take those things to heart. Instead of asking me, is this killing me? I started asking, is this making me better? And that switch right there, Josh, was huge. I hear most people say, little ice cream's not going to kill you. That's not the question to ask. Does a little ice cream make you a better dad, a better mom, a better husband, a better entrepreneur? And what if I compound this interest over 50 weeks per year? On every Friday, if you have ice cream on Friday night, at the end of it, the collective data that we collect, the outcome of it is to make you better. We know that answer. Now apply that to alcohol. So for anyone listening, I'm going to be clear on this. Alcohol is still a poison. Anyway, shake it down. It's not good for us. And if we ask the better question, we get better outcomes. So I had to do this every single day. Ask myself a better question. Does this serve me? Does this make me a better entrepreneur? Does this give me get back to where the best version of me? And that question's rarely asked in the health world. Mm-hmm. Levi, to your question, what did I start to do? I did a deep dive on becoming a little more educated. And then because I have a large experimentation pool, I started taking those same practices I was learning and adding them to my patients and starting to make those same suggestions. So I had this database of experimentation of watching thousands of people collectively get a little bit more sleep, collectively getting a little less alcohol in their life, collectively putting better nutrients. And lo and behold, all of their ailments, every one of them just started to get better. Everything. Because they were taking better care of themselves. So little bit by little bit. And then I wish, again, there was this magic wand that all of a sudden I'd figured this out. But over books and seminars and lectures and mentors and you name it, I learned how to fix the gut. The gut was the big challenge. Yeah.
What is it about, because the gut is probably something that affects most people, especially if they're, if health is not at the top of their list of what they think about every day. What is it about the gut? What is typically going on in the average person's gut, and what did you do to solve it? And how big of a, how important is that?
Huge. More important than I can probably attest to today. And here, let me break that down a couple of ways. One, who has gut issues out there? And I would say that 95% of the people have a gut issue going on. The challenge is no one knows how to define it. Like low levels of bloating, constipation, irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion. Those are all gut issues. Anyone's ever had their gallbladder? That's 700,000 people a year get their gallbladder out. Those are all gut issues. Yeah. Psoriasis, eczema, any skin condition, all gut, brain fog, gut issues. I can go on and on and on. So that's the category of people that fit into it. And it's almost everybody. Mm-hmm. Causes of that. Like, why is that happening? I would say there's probably like a top 4 or 5. On the top of that list is probably antibiotics. Here's the bummer, but the truth. So I grew up on antibiotics, like most people in our country. If I had a sinus infection or an ear infection, my mom gave me antibiotics. It was the best tools that she had. That's what she knew to do. You can go on one round of antibiotics that can permanently destroy and eliminate different microbes in your gut. One round can do it. Very difficult, even with today's technology, to understand which ones happen. But all you need to do is destroy one strand. I'll give you a good example. You can take a round of doxycycline, which is probably like the most common broad spectrum antibiotic out there. Everyone's probably been on it that's listening to this. It can break down or kill off something called oxalobacteria. Oxalobacteria. That is an enzyme in our gut, which relates to microbe that breaks down oxalates. And I'm bringing that up very specific because now we're hearing more and more people out there that can't eat things like spinach and kale that have these high oxalates. We're like, is this new science? No, we've always had oxalates in our food. The challenge is that so many of us now do not have the microbes in our gut to break down those oxalates. Now, all of a sudden, spinach literally acts like a poison in the human body. So that becomes problematic. So with the gut, what happens is that most of like the fundamentals, like our neurotransmitters, things like dopamine and serotonin, the things that make us enjoy life, literally the things that make us be happy and have motivation, they're all they're founded in the gut and then sent to the brain to mature. But if our gut's off, we can't make dopamine. So that's where we see things like chronic, like massive levels of anxiety and depression. These are all gut issues. And we're seeing it so rampant and we're targeting the wrong thing. We're not going from the above down, inside out. We're going outside in. And we're trying to treat biochemical and metabolic issues with chemicals from the outside. And it's not going to work. They're just temporary pauses.
So is there a way to reverse the damage that's been done?
Yes. Yes, there is. And for simplicity, I would say this, that we can heal leaky gut. We can reestablish our microbiome. It's a little bit of a journey, and it probably a little bit more than I could probably describe in this podcast. It is a seminar that I teach for 8 hours. It doesn't take 8 hours either, but my doctors want to know all the nuances. For the average everyday listener, it goes like this. One, first and most important thing, you got to get back to eating real food. And real food means you just eat food with one ingredient. This is not complicated. It's not rocket science. So everyone says, so complicated what to eat. No, it's not. Just eat real food. Like if your food has one ingredient, for example, if we all went shopping right now, we went to the grocery store, we stick to the perimeter. That's where real food is. We pick up, ground beef. What's the ingredients? It says beef. That's it, one ingredient. I pick up celery. It says celery. I pick up apple. It says apple. That's how uncomplicated it is. Get back to real foods. If you only did that, your gut would find a way to heal itself. It just take a little bit longer time if that's all you did. Other simple things. Because of levels of stress that we have, we overutilize, we end up breaking down something called hydrochloric acid in our stomach. We need to have super strong acid in our stomach. And so many people are out there taking antacids and all these other things that are lowering that acid. The reason we need such strong acid, everything that comes into our body should go into our stomach and our body should dissolve it and kill it. So your stomach is a huge opportunity for our immune system to kill all the bad guys coming in. So when we talk about viruses and bacteria and parasites, all this stuff that comes in our body should die in our gut. Most people have inadequate amount of hydrochloric acid in their stomach. So if we can increase that, and that's, some of the old school things we heard of. We heard of apple cider vinegar. That was to acidify the stomach. I use digestive enzymes. So those are probably the most effective and fastest way to do it. Stop the bad guys from coming in. We clean out the bad guys that are in there. It means we got to wipe this stuff out, the mucus and all that kind of crap. And there's different ways. If you just did it through diet and you had a lot of your cruciferous vegetables and used things like garlic can kill off anything. Like garlic is nature's natural antibiotic, which is beautiful.
It kills vampires.
There you go. It kills vampires, right? So there are so many things that just from nature that we can use and they're very, very effective. So we want to do those things. And then I'll tell you what, a little secret for people here. Just about everyone has leaky gut. All autoimmune conditions, or probably 95% of autoimmune conditions. And these are on the rise. I think it's the fastest increasing diagnosis in our country is autoimmune conditions. The derivative is always leaky gut, meaning this is how simple it is. Leaky gut means this. Your tube, your intestine, small intestine, large intestine, the walls open up and things from the tube leak out. And now they're on where they're not supposed to be. They're basically in your, outside of the intestinal wall. Once they're on the outside, your immune system, your white blood cells look at them and go, hey, you're not supposed to be here. Get out of here. And what it does, it usually tags it and tries to kill it. If that stuff that leaks out and lands on your thyroid, then your white blood cells attack your thyroid. We call that Hashimoto's. If those foods land in your joints, your white blood cells attack your joints. We call that rheumatoid arthritis. So depending on the body part, we just name it, and that becomes the autoimmune condition. So long story there, Josh, but to your story, we stop the bad guys from coming in. We break the food down a little bit better. We clean it out. And then after that, we replant the garden. That is when we can start to incorporate things like probiotics, et cetera. And with all that, that's when I'd usually say this. I would say at that point, that's when you want to find someone to walk you through with this strategy. So that'd be equivalent to me where you guys go into your first time, bought a new car wash. What do I do? And you just told them what to do from A to Z. You told them everything to do in one moment. And they're like, wait, goodness, I can't do that. That's a little bit too much right now. Yeah. I would say get with someone very familiar that knows how to do that. It's done 1,000 times before. We used to think it took 2 years to heal a gut. And then now, the journey that I can bring people on, we can heal a gut. Overnight is not true. It's still a journey, but from day one, it starts getting better you really need a 60, 90, 120 day window. And I'll tell you this, you change your gut health, you will change your life.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and how did that change your life? Like, once you figured those things out, you did the research, you learned all of that and started applying it to your life. What happened?
In a nutshell, my mind and my body work better now than ever. That's in a nutshell. So you and I were talking before we started here. So at this point in my life, I've been in healthcare for nearly 30 years now. And then we opened up an organic cafe about 4 or 5 years ago. We have what I consider the cleanest cafe in the country, meaning we are 100% organic, 100% of the time, bar none, and everything's delicious. It's beautiful. We've been avid real estate investors over the years. We recently opened up a healthy dog food store. So what does it mean in my real life? I have the energy and the capacity and the bandwidth to go for more. That is the dream of the entrepreneur. When I was 40 years old, I kind of thought my dream was over. And that is, Josh, and then to put on top of that, I'm not reckoning anyone has my schedule. Part of it is, we'll add one more thing. And then I go around the country speaking. That's probably the thing that takes the most energy. And Levi knows that calls, I'm not there and I'm bouncing back and forth. My schedule changes as much as his does. But nonetheless, I get an opportunity to travel all over the country, speaking to different entrepreneurs like you guys. And it takes a tremendous amount of energy. I had to let that go. For only one reason. It wasn't lack of knowledge. It was a lack of energy. And now, because I have the energy and the ability to literally get up and just feel good, to get up feeling fully rested, feel my body at 55 years old to feel good, my mind to work good. I'm excited now for the first time ever to think about being 65, because if I've done it good for 10 years, then I started thinking, what if I did this good for 20 years? Oh. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers that question, but
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to know, obviously you talk about your wife, right? And the relationship in the marriage. How has that affected your marriage now that you are that protector and provider?
Well, everything. One, I think, if I'm being honest, I think when I see her look at me, I think she looks at me different now than she did then. And as humbling as it is, and she sees me as a great provider and protector now. And that makes me feel good, right?
It makes you feel good. Yeah. And his wife, by the way, I've never met her before. I know she exists, but she is an Olympic athlete, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. I was fortunate. I got to marry up. Yeah, my wife played in the 96 games, and she has the mentality of what it takes to put the hard work. An athlete is essentially an entrepreneur of their own body and their activities. So I'm very fortunate, and I think everyone out there that has a spouse, and I know, Levi, you do, I know your amazing wife, if you're on the same page, everything doesn't have to be identical, but moving in a direction together, it's definitely advantageous to have that.
No, that's awesome. This is obviously a topic that is obviously a popular topic, but I want to know what you think about a couple things. Red meat. Okay, because you have both sides of the camp there on red meat. And I think our listeners would probably want to hear what your thoughts are, because I know I do. And then gluten, and everyone has these allergies to everything these days. And it absolutely drives me crazy, because I've eaten everything and anything my whole life. Now, I obviously way more healthy now. But tell me, if you don't mind, both of those in whatever order, goods, bads, your opinion.
Okay, let's go to red meat first, because I think this is probably the most important. So red meat, I could argue that it's the best source of fuel or nutrition that you could put in the human body. Now, with that being said, why does it get such a bad rap? So red meat, let me explain that first. So red meat, when we think about it, what is red meat? It boils down to two different things. It is essential amino acids, those are proteins, and it's essential fatty acids, those are fats. The key word that I just sent there is essential. There's no such thing as essential carbohydrate, which means so for the human body to live, to make the next cell, we need two things. We need amino acids and fatty acids, fats and proteins. That being said, why red meat? Why is it most important? It has the highest level of things like B vitamins, choline, all of these different things, collagen, all these things that make up our cells, tissues, our muscles, tendons, ligaments. Why has it got such a bad rap? Unfairly, unjustly, and maybe even in a very like deceitful way. One of the reasons that they give red meat a bad rap is they say, well, it adds to our cholesterol and cholesterol is bad. Premise right there is faulty. We probably don't have enough time for it, but one of the things we do in our labs to really identify what we're looking at with your lab panel. But let me explain that part of it. In our country, we only have red meat studies based on red meat eaters. And this is very important to understand this. So in our country, if you get a steak, what does it come with? Steak and potatoes. Right. If you get a burger comes with
fries. Potatoes.
Yeah. So when we study red meat eaters, that includes people going to McDonald's. It was anyone who goes to McDonald's, goes to Wendy's, gets a steak with a big slab of potatoes, gets burger and fries and a soda, all of the above. So no doubt when we look at those things, we're going to see some pretty unhealthy people. And unfortunately, red meat got thrown into a category. But when we look at red meat by itself, we go, wait a minute, look at the nutrients in the red meat. We go, wow, does anything have that level of amino acids, omega-3s? Does anything have that level of essential fatty acids? Does anything have that level of B vitamins, of collagen, of B12? And the answer is no. You literally, I don't know. I would tend to argue or have that debate with anyone to say there's any single food out there that has more nutrients than red meat. With that being said, you're also going to find people across the board to say, wait a minute, doc, though. I'm pretty good at listening to my body. And every time I eat red meat, I don't feel good. It feels full. It just sits there like a brick. That's a red flag from physiological perspective. That means that you no longer have the proper digestive enzymes to break it down. That's it. And that is why digestive enzymes is one of the least sexy, but most important things. Most people don't have the proper stomach acid to be able to break red meat down. So we lean away from it. And as a result of doing that, we're looking for foods that are easier and easier to eat, that metabolize like this. And what does that mean? Carbs and sugar. So if that helps, I could leave that there and move on to gluten.
Yeah, no, that's great. And probably not the direction of, I just have you on this podcast. I love picking his brain, man. I go in and I get excited to be able to go see him. And I don't get a lot of time with him because he's so dang busy when I do go in. So those are just, I love it. I love to learn. And the more
this is also being considered Levi's health checkup, for this too.
We can skip. I know we've been on for a bit, and I'm not sure that that's really the direction that we wanted to go. But I love, like I said, I love to learn. But I think overall, and you and I talk about this a lot as providers, as whether you're an entrepreneur or not, right? If you're listening to this, just as providers, as people, we want to feel good. There's nothing worse than feeling bad. And so I know for me at my age to wake up every single morning and to feel good, like I don't creak. I got to stretch. I get up and I feel amazing, but it's from the fuel. I promise you. And I wasn't a huge believer of this. Obviously, early on, I could eat whatever I wanted to, feel great, right, in my 20s. And I was like, oh, this is stupid. I grew up on Lucky Charms, I think. So the older, again, that we get, the more I've realized, man, how important that is. And so I've just appreciated you and the journey that you've helped Jenny and I continue on, because Jenny was always a big proponent of that, right, in her being in medicine, but you definitely have advocated and just backed up, reaffirmed what the things that she has said. But I think as we are, the sleep deal, Bart, I've been there. I've been like, oh man, I only need 4 hours of sleep. And you know what? There are some times in your life, there was a season, that's all I got. We were raising, 8 kids, 10 kids, working, building a company, doing that. And that's all I had. You get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and I had to do it. That was a season of my life that I had to, but thank God I don't have to do that anymore. And I get, 7, 8 hours of sleep every night. And that is so important. And I don't talk to people now about, oh, you only need 4 hours. I'm like, no, that's not cool anymore. Like, that's not being a leader. Being a leader is saying, no, I need my sleep. And the better we feel, the better I feel, the better I can do for my team, for my company, for my family, for our business. And so that's why I feel like it's so important for those that are a part of following us and what we're doing for our business. And in order for me to be clear, my job is to be the visionary. My job is to lead the company. My job is to make sure we're heading in the right direction. And if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not getting the sleep, if I'm not feeding myself with the right nutrients, then I don't feel like I'm doing justice to all of those that I am now responsible for. And so I do appreciate and I take what you say very seriously. And you know that because we compare our stats and stuff. He's a few years
Y'all
ahead of
compete
me.
against each other.
So it's perfect. I've got a great mentor. And so I'm like, Doc, you're never allowed to leave chiropractic care here in Santa Rosa Beach. But anyway, thank you so much. And I'm not trying to wrap it up, Josh. I know that's your job, but I'm just wanted to let him know how grateful I am for him and for what you're doing to help get people healthier for themselves and how that's impacting others around. So appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. If I might add or throw in a comment there as well, that the journey is definitely different. I agree 100%. We're going to go through seasons, and often you do what is required to get done. That is, if we keep that in mind, required to get done, the entrepreneur journey, sometimes you're going to go through a season or two, and that's usually about a 2-decade period to really build that success, at least a 5 to 10 year stretch. That there might be some less nights with some less sleep. On the flip side of that, one of the things, and I've probably said it to you guys, and I try to say it to everyone that I talk to about health, is that if we can succumb to this simple idea, these 3 things, that being healthy is often going to be inconvenient, uncomfortable, and unfamiliar. Instead of just saying it's going to be easy, if we recognize that that is truth, that we're going to have to every day get up and make another group of decisions today, and it's probably going to be inconvenient. Maybe we have to prep our food. Maybe we have to drive an extra mile to go to the better restaurant, whatever it may be. And then the next level is always going to be unfamiliar because you're not there. So if we succumb to that and know that, the second part I would say is this: as we age, we have to recognize that next year we have to be doing more than we are currently doing this year. Get equal or greater results. If we're not doing more, you're going to get less. Then my last point is this: whether you're truly an entrepreneur or you're a team member of the entrepreneur, I think every one of us is in the business of being healthy. So every individual out there, you are in business for yourself, and that business is to make sure you're the best version of yourself. And once we start to just embrace that and be like, yeah, no one's coming to save me, I got this. It just changes the decision process. Every morning we wake up, every time we look at the sack of pancakes or the eggs, like, decision time, inconvenient, uncomfortable, but I make the eggs and the pancakes, 2 directions, what our physiology is doing. And maybe the last part of that, because I keep saying that, but nonetheless, I will continue to push you. As good as you and your wife are, you're never going to come in when I'm going to go, oh, it's okay. If you come in, just like you just did, and I love the fact that you're honest with me, and that's a big part of having team members is the honesty. I consider myself on your team because you're coming to my place to, get input. You tell me on your vacation, you did really good and you had the ice cream anyways. I'd still push you to say, go on vacation and do good without the ice cream because you can, because this is compounding. So not asking yourself, what can you get away with, but rather what can you do next to get to the next level, Levi? There's another level for you, brother. Yeah. And so I'm not going to stop pushing you.
That's good.
Well, I appreciate that. And one thing that you said, and I wrote down, and this is a challenge to the listeners, is it's probably the most convicting thing is before you do something, ask, does it help or does it hurt? Is this helping me or is this hurting me? Wow. Perception there, that changes a lot. And I'm not sure I'm ready to commit to that fully, but it's definitely, I'm up for the challenge. Good stuff. Appreciate it.
Well, what is, as we wrap up here, what is, if somebody's listening to this and say, okay, I want to start this journey. Like I want to get healthier. I want to change my life and I want my health to be a top priority. What is one thing they can do today that will get them on that journey?
Collect data. So find out exactly where we're at. So that's probably the most important thing. No different if someone's hiring you guys, you probably say, all right, where's your business today? Mm-hmm. The business of our bodies starts with our lab work. So we run a very comprehensive panel for a little bit different for male and female, very comprehensive. So when we sit down, I'm going to derail for just a moment and tell you some of the motivation. In our country right now, there's what we call the 4 horsemen of disease. And real quickly, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. Those 4 diseases right there, 85% of our country is headed on a collision course with those. We can avoid those. My lab panel that we run is for me to have a perspective to sit down with you and go, hey, listen, we're doing good over here. We're headed towards some over here, and we're not over here. What can we do different to have better outcomes later? So, Josh, the starting point is labs. That's something we can do with anyone, anywhere throughout the country. Real easy. In fact, I'll make sure you have some contact points for me where we literally can send you a requisite, And then from there, if that's what they want to do, they go get their labs done, very comprehensive. You pee in a cup. We know everything, all your hormones. There's a marker called insulin resistance. For the most part, no one's probably ever had that tested. That is the one marker. Insulin resistance is what connects all four of those diseases, the four horsemen. And most people are headed that way. And a lot of us, even at 14% body fat, I had insulin resistance, but I got away with it because I was so active. But that sugars, what hurts the joints. That's what shrinks the brain, all of those things. We run a very comprehensive panel. Once we sit down, so once we have the data, then we develop strategy. Once we have the strategy. So it's no different than, Levi, I don't know if you know, but Jenny came in yesterday. You guys are about to run your labs again, and we'll sit down. We got some data. What do we like? What's not working so good? Are there any room for improvement? So no different than doing kind of like a business evaluation. We're evaluating the business of the body. And the beauty is then I get to lean into the entrepreneurial spirit there and push you a little bit and say, hey, listen, we can do better here. Here's an opportunity for you. And, the whole idea is, can we figure out strategy that pushes the envelope to discomfort a little bit, but still sustainable daily?
Yeah.
Every day, and just build off of it. And I'll tell you what, it's so much easier than people think. We think that we have to eat the whole elephant in one bite. We do not. We just have to take a little bit nibble here and as we go. And then from there, Josh, we sit down, we have a consult, and then we follow up. Right. So we're not just going to leave it there. We're going to come back and look at it. If there were some red flags, we'll probably rerun those lab markers. Let's just say your iron levels were too high or too low, or, maybe your inflammatory markers, or C-reactive protein or homocysteine levels, all the inflammatories were high. We'll do something for 90 days, come back and check them. And so that's the built-in accountability that just kind of keeps us moving in the right direction.
Well, it's very similar to business, Bart. You measure what matters, right? And so for us, I've never done this until we started working with you to do our blood work. And Jenny did tell me that we're going to do it again, which is awesome. But that was really eye-opening to do that. And just so that you listeners know, like you said, he can do it from anywhere. I think Jeremy, not to disclose any type of whatnot, but I don't know if that's HIPAA violation or not, but Jeremy also has done his blood work, and I'm sure he'd be fine with me telling you that, and then got a consult from Hawaii. You guys all know Jeremy, our COO, lives in Hawaii. So Dr. Bart was able to do a Zoom call with them, roll through all of the results, and it's really game-changing. It's life-changing. I mean, when we don't know, and we put our head in the sand, and we don't know what is happening, we can't fix anything. And it's no different than our marketing. And that's one of the big things we found in this industry is there were not tools for our customers, Bart, to be able to see, was their marketing actually working? Now that you have a dashboard, now that there are KPIs, people measure that and they see that, you're able to then hone in and put fuel on the fire, right? The right fuel on the fire, instead of spending money where you're not supposed to be. It's no different. And I love that, we can talk about this with the body. It's the exact same thing. We can't fix something that we don't know is broken. And if something is broken, we need to figure out what that is so that we can actually apply the right resources to fix it.
100%. And one of the bigger challenges with health is that most of the challenges, they're silent. They consider cardiovascular disease a silent killer because there's no signs of high blood pressure until it's there, or heart attack until it's there. Type 2 diabetes, you don't know until it's tested. Cancer, you don't know until we discover it. So neurodegenerative disease, that's Parkinson's, dementia, and Alzheimer's. And the bummer is these are all 10, 20, 30-year diseases. So we have to see the writing on the wall as soon as we possibly can so we can start taking the action.
Yeah. That's good. And what's the name of your podcast so people can listen?
It's called The Health Made Simple Show, and that's with Dr. Bart. I'm on Spotify and Apple and all the good places that people listen to podcasts.
Awesome. And we'll put in the show notes how people can connect with you. Are you on social media?
Yes. Instagram, Dr. Bart Precourt. That's probably where we do most of the stuff. And then I still have a personal page, Bart Precourt's. You can find me in all those different areas. And then I'll give you guys a link that if it's helpful for them, they can just click through and kind of get rolling here as well.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Dr. Bart, thank you so much. I think this is very helpful. It was a great discussion. I think it's something that everybody who, is running their business or just, even works for a business, you just feel drained at the end of the day. It may not be just a lack of coffee. Yeah. So I think once we figure that out and apply the things that you've talked about, we can begin to see a big difference in our lives. I know just getting healthy for me has been, I know even for Levi, you were already pretty healthy. And then it's just been noticeably different even since you've been seeing Dr. Bart. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and share what you shared. And we're excited, maybe even for follow-up to dive deeper into some of these things that Levi wants to get into. So.
Nice.
Yeah, I love picking his brain, but like I said, I don't get a ton of time with him. So and before we leave, make sure you guys are text cheers. The word cheers to 411-365. Text cheers to 411-365. And please follow and like and share if you like the Cheers to Freedom podcast. We appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Well, until next time.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks for
Until
having
next
me, guys.
time.
Pleasure.
All right.